When we talk about stuff from Destiny 1, well, a lot of things come to mind that we miss. Some people miss armor, some miss weapons. But the focus of today's video is actually around some abilities from our old subclasses back in Destiny 1. Some of these abilities actually define the entire subclass, making it a huge bummer when we left them behind when transferring to Destiny 2. Now, I know some of these are going to be out of the question because I know they were left behind for balance reasons. But 90% of the abilities that we're going to showcase today are abilities that can be brought back, and they wouldn't break the game. There's only like one, maybe two abilities out of this entire list that are kind of selfishly chosen on my part. By the way, the gameplay that you're going to be seeing today is lots of old gameplay sprinkled with some new gameplay that we got this morning. And yes, we've got a lot of Last Guardian standing clips to showcase some of the lethality of these abilities. So without further ado, let's get started. First on the list, we have the Titan class. And one of my favorite abilities, probably the #1 ability when it came to dealing with other supers, was Sun Charge. You essentially press your melee button while in your super, and this will result in everyone around you eating a knee. Not only did they eat a knee though, they also exploded and chained fiery damage to other enemies. Boys, it was like the one ability that I would swap to mid-game when I knew I needed to take down another super. Got some blinking Stormcallers in front of me, no problem. Sun Charge is about to deal with them. Now, the downside to this ability was the length of the super when activating Sun Charge. It didn't last nearly as long as if you were just to throw hammers. But again, like I said, it was that ability for that guaranteed 1v1 win against other supers. Now, that's pretty much it for the Titans. I know, right? I was going to bring up Weapons of Light, but considering that Weapons of Light is being brought back in Shadowkeep, I'm not going to complain about it. Now, moving on to the next class, Hunters. Oh yeah, I know I give you guys a lot of help, all right? But if there's one thing I miss having on the Hunter class, it's the jump ability Blink. Yes! At one time, Hunters were able to blink as well. And I think the way lore works, Warlocks were actually the ones who taught the Hunters to blink in the first place. Now, I'm not sure what happened between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. Did Hunters get a case of amnesia? Suddenly forgot how to blink? I don't get it. All I know was it was a beautiful thing to combine with things like Fleet-footed for that extra slide when coming out of your blink. And just in general, this one jump alone actually gave Arcstrider a fighting chance when it came to closing the gap. I was a big fan of this, so much so that I actually named it one of the toughest subclasses to master at the end of year 3. And honestly so, as many Hunters as I see hopping around inside of Crucible as of right now with something like Stompies, I would actually be okay going up against a Hunter with Blink. And as someone who is addicted to using Blink all the time on my Voidwalker, I would definitely welcome this jump back. And I don't think it's selfish of us to ask for this. I don't believe Blink would break the game if it was present again on Hunters. Now, another ability that I wish was back on the Hunter class, again, more related to Arcstrider, but back in D1, there was an ability called Razor's Edge, which actually gave your Arc Blade the ability to unleash this destructive wave of energy that would travel along the ground. This was super beneficial if you wanted to hit a large group of enemies at once. Maybe there was a doorway where there was a group of enemies that were getting ready to team shot you, so just peeking and immediately getting a Razor's Edge wave out would wipe those enemies. It was also really nice if you had enemies right outside of your reach. Now, I don't think Arcstrider has too many difficulties closing the gap, and we do have the melee ability on Middle Tree Arcstrider, which also releases that wave of arc damage, but I would love something like this on our super. And like I said, with the animations that we've seen from our melee, I don't think something like this would be too difficult to add to one of the Arcstrider subclasses. Again, similar to something like Sun Charge, you would just add it in to one of the nodes for that super. Kind of like Top Tree Sentinel. You have the option to either pop a bubble or just go Captain America. You would essentially do the same thing for Sunbreakers as well as Arcstriders inside of Destiny 2. Now, moving on to the Warlock class. There's a lot more here for Warlocks than I was expecting. And I guess there's a lot more here that I miss being on the Warlock class. So let's go and hit the obvious ones first. First up, Fireborn. Radiance can now be activated from beyond the grave. Doing so returns you to life, but of course your Radiance duration is reduced. This is selfish choice #1. I get it, I know. It broke the game in many ways, for both PvP and for PvE. It was impossible to balance around. It also resulted in tons of cheesy tactics being pulled inside of PvE. I get why Bungie left it behind, but you can't tell me it was not a trademark ability for the Warlocks. You remember that time when you first died on a control point around a bunch of enemies that had no idea who or what you are, to then just see you come back to life. This right here. This is what made me play Warlock in year 1, amongst, a couple other reasons we're gonna get into. But I was in love with self-res, just because of the surprises you can pull on people, especially in something like Trials. So much so, everyone had like PTSD when it came to Fireborn and self-res Warlocks. We were constantly paying attention who the self-res Warlock was, and always having a sniper reticle on his head at all times. You couldn't leave him alone. They were too dangerous, and I loved it. Now, our next two abilities, they tie directly into the Warlock subclass with Sunsinger, Touch of Flame, and Viking Funeral. Now, both of these were really good. Touch of Flame was really good because it actually allowed you to ignite your enemies, but with your grenades. Currently, right now, you can ignite your enemies on our Dawnblade classes, but it has to be with a melee. This one was specific to the grenades, and when combined with something like Viking Funeral, targets that got afflicted with Ignite take more damage from all sources, and it stacks up to 3 times. The synergy here, guys, was beautiful. It actually made grenades back in year 1 of Destiny 1 absolutely disgusting on the Warlock class. Fireball grenades at the time could essentially almost one-hit Guardians. But even if you wanted to take a PvE approach, getting those stacks of Viking Funeral was really disgusting if you wanted to rock something like Starfire Protocol and just consistently keep sitting there spamming fusion grenades. It had a place with our subclasses back in Destiny 1. I actually think it could synergize really well with Middle Tree Dawnblade. You've already got so many things benefiting the recharge rate of your grenades, Benevolent Dawn, Guiding Flame. Working these abilities in, I just don't think it would be that difficult. Nor do I believe it would make the class way too powerful. But I don't know, maybe that's just me. Now, the next set of abilities, there's actually 3 of them that I really wish were present on Voidwalkers. Number 1, Embrace the Void. Killing enemies with Nova Bomb or any grenade triggers energy drain and restores your health. Embrace the Void was hands down probably the best Voidwalker ability. You can have Soul Rip as your energy drain perk, but simultaneously still get your health back when activating your super, and it worked with grenades. And I know we have some different variations of Embrace the Void in Destiny 2, something like Dark Matter specifically, but what made this so good was the ability to combine it with your Nova Bombs. Speaking of Nova Bombs, this takes us to our next 2 abilities, the ability to actually change the Nova Bomb itself, Shatter and Lance. Now, these were 2 very different settings for your Nova Bomb. If you could space jam like no tomorrow, and you can land Nova Bombs with ease, Lance was your stuff. It essentially allowed your Nova Bomb to travel faster and further. It also gave it more damage, but the biggest thing about it was the speed at which the Nova Bomb could travel. It essentially allowed you to shut down other supers with ease if you were accurate enough with it. Simultaneously, you released the Nova Bomb so quickly that 9 times out of 10, you weren't stuck in the air and got a trade. No, you actually made it out alive. But if you were inaccurate with your Nova Bombs, maybe you have a tough time tracking down your enemies, especially if they're moving at you with a super, aka myself back in Destiny 1, you would want to rock Shatter. Now, Shatter was good for a lot of things. It was great for PvE, especially if you were just trying to hit a large group of enemies, but it was also simultaneously good for PvP. You want to spread your Nova Bomb up into 3 giant projectiles to hit a large group of enemies that are spread out around a control point. Voila. Now, I know we have Slova Bomb, and Slova is nice. It's got a good AoE spread, but it takes too much time. Meaning by the time you release it, the Guardian in front of you that you're trying to kill could possibly still kill you before your Nova Bomb even makes contact. And I've often seen Guardians outrun Slova Bombs. They just run away from it. They'll just kill you and then take off. And your Axiom Bolt just sits there and chases them until it just kind of withers and disappears. Shattered and Lance were 2 great abilities there for Nova Bomb users. And I know I'm like jumping up and promoting lots of dress-wearing Warlocks right now, but there were some really cool abilities Warlocks left behind in Destiny 1. Well, guys, those are the abilities. This was a really random video. We're going into Shadowkeep right now. I was actually hopeful earlier this year that we would be looking at like a subclass layout similar to Destiny 1. Like, I know Destiny 2's layout is more balanced, but D1's system had so much to customize with, so many things you can choose to combine with one another, and I really hate that we pretty much left behind these abilities, some of which were of course hard to balance around, aka self-res Warlocks, but the rest were pretty much left behind because if they were added, considering how good those abilities are, it would probably have to be added in adds a whole new subclass path versus just being able to add in these nodes to these columns and rows, similar to how it was back in Destiny 1, where we can just go in and select what we want to use and what we want to combine together. Anyways, guys, it just kind of got me thinking. Let me know in the comments below what abilities you missed the most. If we left some off on the list, there's actually been a lot that have transferred to Destiny 2. They just have different names, of course, with some slight variations. But these are many of the main abilities that I saw that were class-defining abilities that were left off the list. I'm just happy Weapons of Light is actually making a return. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.